I think we'll go ahead and get started just for fun. My name is Julia Haverstock. I'm the librarian here. I'm a, I don't know, third or fourth generation gardener, depending on who you ask. And I grew up gardening, and I started the Seeds Library back in January. And this is the result, and I'm so happy you all are here. And we're really lucky today that our horticulture instructor, Rachel Meriwether, is going to talk to us about seed saving. And then I don't really have a plan necessarily, but there are seeds here that can be, some need to be processed a little bit, and they're for sharing, and eventually what doesn't get taken today will end up here. So any amount of envelope stuffing that y'all are willing to do would be helpful for me. So however long you want to stay, we're open till 6. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Rachel because she has some really cool things to share with us today. So thank you all for being here.
Okay, so I'm going to start with just a little bit of info on what a seed is. The little explanation I always use, whatever age I'm talking to, is that the way to think of a seed is a baby plant in a box with its lunch, right? So it's a teeny baby plant, and then it's got that endosperm, that's what it's going to eat, and then it's inside of a box. Those boxes can be locked really, really tight sometimes, right? And the whole idea of seed saving is that you are trying to get to that point, right, where the box is locked up real tight, the baby plant is safe in there with its lunch, and it's not going to rot, and nothing's going to go wrong, right? So we're trying to get that little baby plant all safe in there, which also means you have to let the seed get fully ripe, which we'll talk about just a little bit more in just a second. But ultimately, remember that, right? There is a living being inside of that seed. It is actively alive, and all it's waiting is for some moisture and the right conditions for everything to start clicking along, right? And germination begins and everything starts going. So that's what a seed is. Depending on how tight you lock the box of a seed and depending on how it's made, some seeds can last incredibly long periods of time, right? I think the record holder at this point is 20,000 years. There was a little squirrel nest that was uncovered by a receding glacier, and there were some little campion seeds in there that were fine, right? Behind that is sort of like lotus seeds and date palms and stuff that are like 5,000 and 6,000 years old. I mean, it's really incredible what seeds are capable of doing once they are to that point of full desiccation with the little baby sealed inside, right? So they can last for a really long time. That being said, there are some notoriously that don't last very long. It's just a fact. If you think about the types of plants that might be true for, at least for me, it does seem to be pretty intuitive, right? So like lettuces, a lot of the brassicas, onions, their seeds usually only last a year or two. It doesn't matter how well you treat them. That's just true, right? They make lots of seeds. They're an annual, so they're reproducing all the time. So they aren't putting any physiological energy into making a really tight box, right? It's very different than something that's making one huge seed, again, like a lotus or maybe a palm tree or something that's putting huge amounts of energy into this one thing and then sending it off through space and time, hopefully to live later. So again, you can check that in all sorts of books. And while I'm on that, this is still like the book as far as I know. Mine's getting a little dated now. There's definitely newer versions of this book out. But Susan Ashworth's book has a lot of this information, right? It goes plant by plant towards the back where it's talking about exactly this sort of thing. I happen to flick to the lettuce page. And it's going to go through all of this, right? How long those seeds should last. What's the best way to store them? What are your isolation distances, which again we'll get to in just a second. But if you're looking for a book, there are a lot out there, and I know Julia's got at least a few on seed saving, but this remains the one that at least I think of as an excellent reference text, right? Seed to seed, right? So the whole idea being you're starting it from seed and then you're saving a seed. So you're getting all the way to the point of getting to save a seed. And it gives really detailed information, again, per plant, as opposed to, we also have some printouts that Julia did, so there's some charts and things that are going to give you the basics. This is going to give you a description of each plant and all the things and kind of explain some of this stuff that the charts condense down, right? Yeah, okay. Next part, I feel like I get this question a lot, and it is very, very important when it comes to seed saving. A hybrid versus an heirloom is going to make a huge difference in whether or not you should even bother saving the seeds, right? So heirloom is synonymous with the phrase open pollinated. Open pollinated is a little, maybe just a little more technical way to say heirloom. Heirloom's kind of more like a common phrase for that, what that means. That means that if you have a yellow patty pan and a yellow patty pan, and they cross each other, they're the ones that pollinate, you will get a plant that is also a yellow patty pan. If you put a yellow patty pan next to a white patty pan and they cross, you're going to get who knows what, right? Because open pollinated does not mean they can just pollinate with whatever and it's going to come true to type. They do have to cross with the same plant. So if you're growing these Trumancino squash or something, and again, you put it next to a dinosaur gourd and they happen to be flowering at the same time, again, you might get who knows what. And isn't that the magic of plants and what people do sometimes is crossing and making these crazy things? And that's what open pollinated is, right? It can cross with another one of its kind and you will get true to type. If you have something that's a hybrid or F1, which I brought one of our little seed packs, if nobody's ever seen it on a seed pack, you can read this one in a minute. If it says F1, that means that for these hybrid yellow onions, they took one type of yellow onion and another type of yellow onion as parents, crossed those, and this is the baby. You have to have those two separate parents to get this baby. If you save seeds from these, you're going to get who knows what, willy-nilly all over the place, because its genetics are not stabilized yet, right? So this is not, you have to start with those same two parents to get this plant. You can't just save these seeds from this plant because there's too much genetic craziness going on right now. You can stabilize F1 generations. There are ways you can do that, and people, just like we were talking about, if you cross these Trumancinos with a dinosaur and you get something you like, you can do that over and over and over again until you get two of the same thing, and then you back cross those over and over and over again until you get one that stays the same, and then you have a plant that is open pollinated. Maybe not heirloom, because heirloom obviously implies to some degree that it's been there for a while, but it does become open pollinated, right? It's been stabilized genetically, and you can now save those seeds and get it true to type. Does that make sense? Does anybody have any questions about that? I know it can be a little strange, and it is really important when it comes to saving seed, because you're just going to be so disappointed if you save seed from a hybrid plant, and then it's just going to be, I don't know, sometimes they don't even grow, right? Because a lot of hybrids don't produce viable offspring. So if you save seed from a hybrid, they just won't ever produce, right? It's a weird, like a real famous non-plant example is mules. Mules are donkeys and horses crossed. Mules cannot breed. They don't produce viable offspring. It's just a thing. Yeah. Okay, moving right along. So that brings me to when you're doing crosses, obviously you're doing it on purpose. If you don't want things to cross, you have to isolate them somehow. You can either isolate them by distance or you can isolate them by time, right? So if you want to grow yellow patty pan and white patty pan, but you have a really tiny garden and you don't want to have to like bag stuff up and whatever, you got to plant the yellow ones first. Wait until those are done, and then plant the yellow ones and save seed from each one. Because if you plant them at the same time and they're flowering at the same time, everybody's sending pollen all over the place, and everybody's very happy about that, and they're crossing all over the place, and whatever happens, happens, right? The other way to do it is by distance. And this chart in particular has some of these. There's a specific category right here that's recommended isolation distances. So some of them are not that far. Particularly if they're insect pollinated and you have a lot of flowers, insects are going to be happy where they are, so you only need them 500 feet away or 800 feet away or something like that. If they are wind pollinated, say like corn or something like that, if you truly want corn to come true to type, it has to be like a mile from any other type of corn anywhere, right? Huge isolation distances to keep them from getting pollinated from some other thing. If you grow yellow corn that's supposed to come out yellow and it has different colored kernels, that's because pollen from a colored corn got on the tassels, and that one kernel got fertilized by a piece of pollen from a colored corn, right? And now it's across, and it's doing something different than all the other kernels on this ear corn. The other way you can make this happen is putting something over the flowering structure of whatever kind it may be to keep it from getting repollinated. Right, so you'll see this a fair amount in cornfields for this exact reason, because it's hard to get isolation distances all of that sort of thing. Every now and then you'll see these little baggies over the top of every single corn so that they are keeping pollen from re-getting to that ear of corn. I had a friend in grad school whose job that was, and it was the most tedious thing. like I'm just gonna go out here and put all these little baggies onto every single bit of corn. It's a little easier with something like, say, a squash or a tomato where you can see all the flower parts. For that, you can just pull off the stamens and anthers, right? Once it's pollinated, even if you do it by hand or if you see the little ovary swelling at the base, then you can pull off all the stuff that can get pollinated and we're done here, right? This has been pollinated the way I want it to. I don't have to wrap it in a little baggie or whatever, but you can do that. Obviously, around here it rains a lot about the time seeds are coming ripe, so you can't necessarily do paper bags, which tends to be a lot of what they do in the Midwest as it gets dry in August, so plastic helps a little bit. You have to pay a lot of attention to that though, because then it gets humid and the seed and flower will rot inside the bag. Oh my gosh, so like, you have to balance all of those things when you're doing all this sort of stuff. Start with the easy ones. If you've never done this before, just set yourself up for success, right? And pick squash or something like that that is so easy to save seed from and is enjoyable, honestly. The other thing to know when you're actually doing crosses and things like that is whether a plant is monoecious or dioecious. So monoecious plants have male and female flowers on the same plant. Dioecious plants, it's two, right? So you have to have two plants. There's a male and there's a female somewhere out there. And if you have those, you have to make sure that there's a male or a female, right? Or nothing's getting pollinated and you're not gonna get seed from your plant. So just because it's open pollinated doesn't necessarily mean it's not dioecious. And so you can put a dioecious open pollinated plant out there and you don't have a male and a female, they just won't ever make seed because nobody's getting the pollen they need, right? Yeah. Okay, let's see, what is next on my list? It feels like this could go without saying that you would always want to save the best of whatever's coming out of your garden. But remember that no matter what you do, you are sort of selecting for something. So let's say that every year you seem to get your best zucchini during the first couple weeks of the season. If you continuously save zucchini seed from the first few weeks, you are selecting for zucchini that fruit earlier and earlier. Right? You're always sort of selecting for something because that's the way it works, is like this thing that happened at this time. I mean, this takes a while, and the more you do it, the more it happens, and the more you save seed in a place, you're also selecting for something that survived here. I don't know about anybody else, but I have a lot of trouble here getting cantaloupes to get fully ripe. Right? The vines will look great, and I get these cantaloupes that get about this big, and then they just kind of like, I don't know, they don't really do all that great. And one of my neighbors and I started exchanging seeds we've saved and finally gotten to the point where we have a cantaloupe that'll get to actual size, but some of it's because of that. We've been saving seed now for about 5 years and have a cantaloupe that kind of likes our environment. That is like, oh yeah, I don't mind it so much that there's an incredible amount of powdery mildew and it's really humid and this isn't my favorite climate, but fine, right? So just know that whatever you're choosing, you want the healthiest, but you're always on some level selecting for something. You're nudging your plants in one direction or another based on what choice you made for the seed that you're saving, right? Yeah. Okay, I already kind of touched on this, but it is really important that seeds be fully ripe. Because again, you need that little baby plant in there to be fully alive. This one that I just picked from that fennel plant outside is a good example of how seeds ripen at different times, even on a single plant, right? And particularly with zucchinis, cucumbers, squashes, stuff like that, the time that we harvest them to eat is not the same time that you would harvest them to save seed, right? Most of the time when you harvest a zucchini at the right time to eat it, the seeds are kind of small and you can even chew them up, right? They're kind of soft. If you harvest a zucchini and pull the seeds out when it's ready to go, those things are hard, right? You can't pierce it with your fingernail. They're kind of swollen a little bit because there is, again, a plant in there with a repository of food. So it's this whole thing. And so know that the way you harvest or think about vegetables or flowers in terms of harvesting them for eating is very different than getting them to the point at which they are ripe. If you're doing something like this, or like,
There's a bag of green beans.
Oh yeah. So this, yeah, I mean, I don't know how many of y'all grown green beans, but right, I can have a plant with all of these on a single plant.
Yeah, those are all from a single
Yeah, and this one, I mean, we can pass them around, but like I can feel in here how soft they are. Like even though it's gonna look like seed, the seeds in here probably will never dry to the point that can be saved, right? It's gonna look almost dead when these sorts of things are actually ready for saving. When you are trying to wait for this kind of thing, when they're tiny, so where did I say? Oh yeah, some columbine. It is really hard to catch wildflowers at the right moment, right? They tend to have teeny tiny little seeds and they blast them out, right? Stuff like that. They like have all these weird physiological mechanisms to like shoot them into the wind and stuff like that. So, God, I'm not even gonna try and necessarily pull these out with my fingers because I feel like I'm gonna drop them all over the place, but y'all should look when you get closer. I don't know if you can even see just how tiny those little black seeds are in my hand. And they have these little seed pods that are like these little, I don't know, tunnels almost where the seeds are in there. And as soon as they're ripe, the plant is starting to drop them. So this is another instance where you might wrap them in something, right? Because you can't necessarily be checking them every minute of every day. Like, oh, they're ripe yet. Oh my gosh, are they ripe yet? Are they ripe yet? I should get them. No, I shouldn't get them. Oh my gosh. So you can maybe get them a little bit early, wrap them in a paper bag, and then hang them up to dry with their seed head in the paper bag. And then as the seeds drop and dry, you can be collecting your seeds without, again, having to like watch them and check them every afternoon when we've all got jobs and lives and have to feed ourselves.
So that's an okay thing to do, to get them just a little, the reason I'm asking is I've
Sure.
brought back black hollyhock,
Oh, cool.
and some of the seed pods, when I went to break them open, these dried for 2 or 3 weeks in the
There's
attic.
hollyhock in there
Yeah.
too.
Some are lighter than others,
Sure.
and they were a little more green when I was, yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
And a little less brown, a little more green. Is that still gonna work out okay?
Yeah, I mean, I think as with many things, you're kind of balancing what you can and can't do. So if you've got this, or maybe even you've got fennels that are kind of mixed ripening, maybe you're gonna go ahead and harvest them when it looks like they're most ripe. And you're just gonna give up on these, because they're just never gonna get there, right?
75% is plenty.
75, yeah, exactly, and we're just gonna call that good. You also can, of course, harvest them as they ripen down, right, because they're usually doing that, as these are coming off, so I'm gonna cut these off, I'm gonna take away, cut them off. But if it was this whole stalk of these hollyhocks, and these are fully ripe and these aren't, I would do exactly that. If the whole plant is dying, and all we're really waiting for is desiccation, right, there's no more umbilical cord, if you will. There's nothing being pumped into this seed, ovary, endosperm anymore. That is, all we're waiting for is moisture reduction so that it can last through time. So if you were to put this in this bag upside down again with a paper bag around it, as it drops the seeds out, fine, who cares? And then we're just waiting again for it to dry out to the point of storage. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's see what else is on my list. Okay, cleaning seeds. So at this point, we are going to discuss the difference between dry and wet seed saving. Most of what I'm seeing in general, and certainly the easiest place to start, is dry seed saving, right? Which is what we're talking about, where you're letting them go to the point of desiccation. Like anything else, you can make it as complicated as you want. If you're in like scientific seed saving, they have these real detailed numbers about like, it's down to 3% saturation rate, and when's this and that, like don't stress yourself out with that. Like basically, if your fingernail can pierce it, it might still be a little too damp. Once it's gotten hard enough that your fingernail can't break the surface, it's probably dry enough, and let's just move on and save seeds and live our lives as best we can, right? So dry seed is probably the easiest, because you're just waiting. You're just waiting for it to dry. As soon as it's dry, there we go. Wet seed, brought some gloves so I won't have to be slimed by tomato seed. It looks pretty nasty right now for everybody who can see it, and you can come a little closer, right? Or I guess I'm about to dump it out, but this is tomato seed that I mixed with, I don't know, about equal parts water as the slime I pulled out. And then this sat for about 4 days. So they essentially are fermenting. I mean, sort of. I mean, it's more like they're molding, right? And so this mold develops on the top. You would do this with any kind of seed that has that gelatinous coating. And once it ferments fully, that gelatinous coating goes away. You can't really, I mean, you can try and save tomato seeds without getting that goo off, but they just won't store as well, right? That little goo is almost like a water pack that is wrapped around it for the seed to germinate. So if you take a seed that still has that little goo on it, even once it dries, if you put it in the fridge, that thing is just waiting to rehydrate and is just setting you up again. If any sort of moisture gets onto it, it's just gonna rehydrate, it's gonna make that seed germinate in your fridge, and then it wasted its moment to become a full life plant, right? So you can put these in, just have a little bit of water. It'll develop this nice little white fungal film across the top. Luckily it doesn't smell bad or anything, right? It's not any of the scary molds or funguses. It's not pink or black or any of those horrible ones, a nice white fungus. I'm just gonna dump this out right here. And y'all can come and look at these in a minute, but as I pull these out, they don't have any more of that slime. Like if anybody's ever seen a fully dried tomato seed, it's got kind of like hairy look. It's kind of fuzzy, weirdly enough. And that one's already like that, right? It doesn't have that like gelatinous goo on it that a tomato seed that you're pulling straight out of a tomato has. So I will leave some of these here for y'all to look at. But that is how you do wet seed saving. It takes a little bit longer because obviously you got to leave them in your house somewhere to mold. I know I can't leave them anywhere my pets can get to it. My pets think it's so fun to get into the tomato slime. I don't know why. I mean, I guess it's got a strong smell. You also have to keep them covered because the fruit flies will lay eggs in them in a second. And then you'll have little bitty maggots in there, and that doesn't help anything at all, right? So yeah, I usually have some sort of like cheesecloth or dishcloth or whatever I might have over the top. You can't seal it because then it can't ferment, right? Because fermentation requires oxygen and spores and all kinds of stuff. So it needs to stay where it can breathe just a little bit. Yeah, Nadine.
So you're putting them out on paper towels or newspaper just to
show
separate the
y'all.
gunk?
Yeah.
Oh, but then you're gonna cover them.
At home,
Yeah.
if I had this, like I would have done it just like this to this point, and then what I would have done is I would have taken a strainer and I'd have poured this through the strainer, and then I would have rinsed them until all this slime is gone completely, and then I would set them out to dry completely on a paper towel. Yeah. What I will say is that no matter what seed I'm saving, whether it's wet seeds like this is even more important. So like if I had cleaned these completely and then I had laid them out on newspaper, you have to go by every now and then and like shuffle them a little bit, or else as they dry, they'll seal themselves to the paper, right? Same when I save even like cucumber or squash seeds. I usually will save I'll kind of like rinse them in a bowl, and then I'm putting them through a strainer until like all of the veggie matter is gone. And then as I put them somewhere to dry, every now and then I go and kind of like fluff them just a little bit. And when I do that, I generally am also checking for any that turn out to be hollow, right? And as you start doing it, more and more you realize, like you pick up that one, you're like, nope, that is just a husk. That is not viable. There's nothing in there. And I mean, it's just like so fun when you do it, and they're all like swollen and plump. And I don't know. I mean, obviously I'm a huge plant nerd, but it just is really thrilling to know that there's a little creature in there just like waiting to come to life, and it can be really thrilling and fun. Yeah. So there is a little bit of a difference, right? Wet, dry seeds. You got to think about those just a tiny bit. Let's see. What else do I have on my list before we all stand up and do some actual stuff? Oh, okay, so storing seeds. Yeah, where to put them. So in ideal conditions, seeds are in either glass or metal in a freezer with no other moisture really affecting them, right? So you want them dry and you want them really cold. I don't personally have enough freezer space to keep all my seeds in a freezer. Like, that would be great if I just had a chest freezer for nothing but seeds, but I don't. So I keep important ones in my freezer. The rest, again, are sealed real tight inside mason jars. And if I have just a few like this, right, I don't take them out of the paper. I leave them in the paper so I know what they are, or little seed packs that you make yourself. And I'll put multiple ones in a jar. So I've got all the tomatoes in one jar, I've got all the cucumbers in another jar. But what you really don't want, again, is moisture collecting on them. And every time you take a seed container in and out of a fridge, if it's just in this, moisture condensates on them. So if it's just in paper, every time you take it in and out of the fridge, you're adding just a little bit of moisture to it. So when I am in the springtime starting to pull seeds out, I'll usually pull them out of the fridge 24 hours before I crack the lid, right? Because I want them on the external to get to room temperature so that all of that moisture doesn't hit the seeds themselves. Obviously a little bit's getting on them, but a little bit is fine, right? You just don't want them to get wet, because if they get wet at all, then you're triggering germination. Has anybody heard of the Doomsday Seed Vault on Svalbard Island? Right, so that's the whole point of putting it up there, is that you don't have to use as much energy to keep that seed vault cold. Because that is ideal conditions. It's frozen, absolute reduced humidity to almost zero, and that they just sit there sort of waiting.
Can you explain that, what that is?
So Svalbard Island is one of those islands that I forget who owns it these days. Maybe it's Russia, maybe it's Iceland, I forget. Anyway, not important. And there is, well, I'm not gonna remember now who funded it even. It's a joint operation between all of the nations of the world, and even individuals can rent space in it. And you send your seeds to this place, and then they store it in this huge underground vault. And the whole idea is that if in the event that something were to go extinct, or if lots of things were to go extinct, you could essentially repopulate the vegetative world, right? I actually had a job for the Missouri Botanic Garden for a little while, sending seeds to that place. So all sorts of research to do this, but I had a list of like 4 or 5 plants in the place where I lived. And my job was to go and collect seed from these places, send them off to a certain lab that would verify they were what they were, make sure they were going to be viable enough, and they packaged them off and sent them up to Svalbard where they are stored. You can tour it. I would love to go. It was so bad. Yeah, let's go to Svalbard.
1,300 kilometers above the Arctic Circle, it
Yeah.
says, and the permafrost.
Yeah, in the permafrost.
In Norway.
So, yeah, Norway, nice. Now I know. Norway currently owns Svalbard Island. They have polar bears. The few people I've ever talked to that have been there, that's like part of the thing. When you go there, you also get to see polar bears, you know, because why would you go up there only to see a seed vault, obviously? Yeah, let's all go to the seed saving vault. So when you're storing seeds, the other thing is, like, if you don't have space in a fridge, because really you don't want them in a fridge with fruits and vegetables. Fruits and vegetables release something called ethylene gas that causes other things to ripen or rot quite a bit. And so it helps to have them in glass and metal, again, but if they aren't in their own fridge and you have a house that's climate controlled, if you just have them somewhere that stays relatively cool and relatively dry, just start saving seeds. Don't feel like you have to have, again, fully idealized conditions to at least give this a shot and start saving certain seeds. Squashes, melons, beans are going to be the easiest to start with, and they are the most forgiving, right? So if you start there, then you certainly can feel like you were successful at it, really. Let's see, I'm trying to think of anything else about storing them in particular. If you store them already wet, or if you store them and they haven't dried completely, even in a fridge, they will start to mold, right? I actually pulled this little baggie of columbines, if you want to pass this them around. This does, I mean, there's bugs in here, so these obviously were just harvested, so I'm not trying to like critique anybody specifically, just using an example that if you leave any sort of vegetative matter on, even when vegetative matter looks dry, there's still a fair amount of moisture in vegetation. And so you can see the amount of condensation in this Ziploc bag, right? You see how much is on there, how much moisture is in this bag? So if you put seeds, if you were to harvest these columbines and just stick them straight into a jar, even in the fridge, there's a really good chance these seeds would rot, right? Because there's just too much moisture in here, and even in cold conditions, things still rot. In the freezer, maybe a little bit, but I don't know if anybody's ever worked with food, but a big point they always make with food is freezing something doesn't kill anything, it just slows it down. Right, so if you put something in a freezer, it's not killing any of the funguses or molds or whatever might be on there. It's just slowing them down, and the longer they stay in your freezer, the more likely they are to rot a little bit if there is any moisture involved. Seeds by themselves have very little, because their seed coats are made of certain types of substances that can desiccate to the point where there's almost zero moisture. Right, all the moisture is locked inside the endosperm, and so the seed coat itself is very, very dry. Those can be stored for, again, 20,000 years, apparently. Yeah, and come out and be just fine. Yeah. All right, let's see. I think I might have one more. Yeah, I have a question. Yeah.
On the columbine seeds, if they were dry, and I put them in a sealed envelope and they're in a warm garage, are those any good?
For how long?
Just since spring.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I certainly wouldn't give
So
up
then
on them.
so then put those in a jar and in the freezer.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's almost the time of year where you could put them out, right? Columbines
Okay.
are one of those seeds that, I mean, we're kind of jumping into seed propagation at this point, but it's almost fall, and those sorts of native seeds really like to be stratified, so they like a cold, wet period. So if you put them out in fall, then you don't have to store them until springtime. But yes, if you're gonna store them till springtime, you should definitely put them into something glass or metal and put them into a fridge or freezer.
Okay.
That's the best way to store things.
Thank you.
All right, let's see. Yeah, I think we had maybe one more thing on here. Oh, I was just gonna make a plug for Seed Savers Exchange. For anybody who's not familiar with the Seed Savers Exchange, it's a nonprofit organization that's based out of Iowa. And this is what they do. They save lots of seeds. They have incredible varieties. Their farm is really fun. I've been there once myself. You can become a member, and there's a really elaborate network of seed sharing and all of that. They do a really great seed catalog. But this is their whole focus, is maintaining and preserving open pollinated seed for the use of all of us throughout time. They accept seed from various people. They keep a really cool sort of storyboard of various seeds, who originally saved them, where did they start from, did they get brought over, were they a part of a breeding program, how exactly did it work? So they're a really great company to look into if you want to continue learning about seed saving. Okay, that is all the actual remarks I have prepared. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah, back here.
So if your seeds did dry on like a paper towel or whatever it was, and they dried and you didn't go by and shake them and everything and they got stuck to it, is that seed then ruined if it has like a little paper towel stuck to it, or you just save it with a paper
No,
towel?
I mean, I'll do my best to rub it off, because paper is a little bit of it absorbs water, so you're kind of attaching it to something that has the ability to absorb water. But if you can get most of the paper towel off, fine. And once it's in a fridge in a glass container, you have a minimal chance of moisture being absorbed by the paper.
I was really lucky. I set some tomato seeds on paper towel, and they stayed out a whole year on the countertop in the back corner. So I just ripped them off and put them in with paper towel on the ground. They were great.
Yeah, we're definitely talking about idealized conditions during my talk, but I mean, plants are trying to survive, right? They are capable of incredible things. So, I mean, in our little fridge that we have here in the horticulture program, we have seed from like 2012, right? I mean, I'm not just gonna throw it out. Why would I just throw it away? That's ridiculous. If it's something that is gonna take a lot of time, my energy, I might do a germination test first, right? Which is where I take a few of them, I put them on a paper towel that's damp, and I see how many germinate. Isn't that a little radical? And if it's over 40 or 50%, absolutely we're gonna use these, it's fine, right? For a seed company, if they're sending me new seed, I want 80 to 90 minimum, right? Those need to germinate a lot. Unless, of course, it's a type of seed that doesn't have very high germination, like rosemary is notorious for this. That's not really how they propagate themselves most of the time in the wild, so they're not really trying all that hard to make a whole lot of viable seeds. So most rosemary, even on a good day, you're getting 30 to 40% germination from your seeds. It's just a thing, right? But again, lettuces, tomatoes, something like that, I want almost every single one of those to germinate. Yeah, in ideal conditions.
How do you know when the lettuce is ready to harvest and dry? Because I've never figured that out.
Sure. So, I mean, it's gonna look, if you leave a lettuce to go to seed, it's gonna look like a dandelion, right? It's gonna get up to about right here. It's gonna make those little yellow flowers.
I got that.
It will look completely dry. But they have tiny, tiny little seeds, because you've obviously started them from seed. So that's one of the ones where, again, you're gonna have to wrap it in something probably, because they're gonna start dropping them almost right away.
If I let them drop, they'll
Just germinate.
They will,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll just do that.
Yeah, which is kind of nice. I mean, I have volunteer lettuce in my garden for sure, because I do ignore them sometimes, and I know my pollinators like it when they bloom. I guess that does bring me to another, I mentioned brassicas earlier, but please, nobody start with brassicas, because they're a biennial, right? So a biennial means that to get them to flower, you would have to grow them. Like if I started some kale or cabbage earlier this spring, I would have to grow them all the way through this winter, and then they would flower next fall. And in our climate in particular, the powdery mildew and the aphids that will be on them first thing next spring is just so frustrating and really difficult to deal with. I mean, like if you just really want to, then Absolutely, like don't let me discourage you from a challenge or anything like that, but know that you are picking a challenging one. It's really hard when you do biennials because you got to keep them alive for 2 years straight, which is hard. I mean, I know the internet can be a very confusing and dangerous place sometimes, but Googling things like ripe lettuce seed or lettuce seed at harvest is a great thing because we don't usually see lettuce flower, right? Like we're harvesting it well before then. So giving yourself an image of what that should look like, I do that too. If I'm playing with a new plant, like I want some visual in my head for what I'm getting, the point I'm trying to get to. So, yeah.
Oh, I overplant
Don't show me from
lettuce,
Google.
so it always goes.
Yeah.
But I've never known.
I know,
Where do I
they're
cut it?
bolting
When do I
so
cut it?
fast these days. Yeah, at this point anyway. Yeah, at the end of the season. Any other questions? Yeah, indeed.
Of course I have questions.
Awesome.
Two. One is, a neighbor had gotten seeds from the dollar store and did not see if there was an expiration date on. And when she put the flowers out, nothing at all.
Yeah.
So is that a product or manufacturer or just Mother Nature?
So I really discourage people from getting seeds from Amazon, the dollar store, places like that, because all of the above, right? They aren't processed properly. Who knows how long they've been stored in an uncooled, hot storage unit warehouse somewhere. They don't always have expiration dates, so like, these are Johnny's seeds, which are pretty expensive these days, but there's the germination test date on this package, right? So these were tested in 2018. I know when that happened. A lot of those morning glories or lettuce or whatever you're gonna get that's just there on those counters, they don't have that because it could have been 10 years ago. And they've just got a big collection of seed that every now and then they package and send it out. And so you don't know. And I have very rarely heard a success story with those kinds of seed sources, right? They just do tend to have really abysmal germination rates for many reasons.
So your envelope should have an expiration for a good seed,
Yeah.
correct?
And a germination percentage, right? So this one is 92% in 2018.
Okay.
So by this point, we're, 5 years later, and these are onions. These probably aren't good anymore. Just because onions, again, are pretty notorious for the short window. I use these a lot. I sort of pulled these just for fun out of our package of very oldest seed. And we use these for all sorts of other things, right? We look at them under microscopes. We do the germination tests in paper towels so somebody can see one that's not successful versus one that is. So we keep these around. But yes, if I was looking for a company that I was actually going to bother spending money that was worthwhile, I want both of those bits of data on the actual package itself. If it doesn't have that, I mean, I do. I get all the time people are like, oh, I got 1,000 of this off of Amazon and only 2 of them came up. I'm like, yeah. Well, please don't feel like you're not doing a good job because it's not you. It is the seeds you're getting, right? I mean, who knows? Maybe even they were saved from hybrid seeds so they won't germinate. There's all sorts of stuff like that. Yeah.
My other question is, my neighbor from Nova Scotia bought some lupine seeds back.
Fun.
And were they right on the plant or the ground?
No, they're from the plant, like they grow wild
Sure.
in Nova Scotia,
Yeah.
so I just kind of pulled over and, or I found a patch.
Yeah.
How does
So
she
it
dry
looked like
them?
they were dried on the stem, looked like the stem
Right, the
was
big
dry, but the
pods.
pods hadn't, some had opened, but not all of them had opened.
Sure.
So not sure
Well, how to dry them or how to,
if they're okay with just leaving them in there, in the pot, or if they're not.
I mean, lupins dry pretty hard, right? So like the seed itself, if again, you can squeeze it between your fingers and the seed coat doesn't give at all, they're probably dry enough to go ahead and store. If the seed pods themselves are still pretty sealed, those you could maybe hang to dry for a little while and they'll usually crack open when they're dry enough.
Even though it's been removed from the plant?
Yeah.
See, that's what I didn't know, or maybe I picked them too soon, or.
No, I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes kind of like your question, if the plant itself is dead, there is no more nutrition being pumped into those seeds, right? They have
Okay.
absorbed everything they're gonna absorb. Now all they're doing is desiccating. That's the only thing they're now doing is waiting there to become drier. So whatever's gonna be viable is viable if the plant's dead. Again, like I said, there's no umbilical cord. That has been cut off. No more xylem and phloem.
Because see, I thought, well, maybe once you cut it off, you cut the brain off and it doesn't know to come
Yeah.
out. You know
I
what
mean, it's cut its own brain
It has
off.
a message, it has
Sure.
a chain of demand and
Now-
stop now. They don't know to.
This one is not the same, right? This one still has a green stem. This has active xylem and phloem in it. So this is still pumping nutrition into these seeds. These seeds do not have a fully developed little plant and gymnosperm. All that is not in there yet. This one, on the other hand, right, that stem is dead. There's no more plumbing. There's nothing going in there. There might be some that could dry a little bit more, but you're not, again, all you're doing is removing moisture. You didn't stop anything from happening, if that makes sense. Yeah. So you could dry them up or hang them up to dry a little bit longer, just so again, you're facilitating that desiccation process before you store them. But, I mean, lupin are pretty fun to store because they dry so hard.
So, it wouldn't be good to try to pry those pods open and see the seeds inside, or let it open on its own?
I mean, at some point, I would probably pry them open. You know, you could let them dry
Okay.
and see how many will pop on their own. And you could maybe even like separate them into baggies where here's the seeds that came from pods that were already open and here's the one that didn't, because they might have a little bit of a different germination rate. Because,
That's good.
I mean, even plants give up at some point, or there's a frost and they're like, okay, done. We've ripened all the seeds we can ripe. These ones lower on the stem, whatever, fine. So they aren't going to be viable, right? And that's not because you did anything. It's just because not every single seed out there is going to get to the point of viability no matter what. And so then you would maybe have two different germination rates based on these two standards that you're looking
So
at.
is there any kind of regulation or laws when people bring seeds from one state to the other?
yes.
Is there like,
Yes.
no, like
They
people-
didn't come from Nova Scotia.
No,
No.
because I think about people are camping or whatever, they're, like if somebody is home
Yeah,
and
sure.
they pick some
I mean, I
flowers
say
and-
that it changes all over the place, right? I mean, has anybody ever driven into California?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right?
They'll look through your
They check
whole
everything. They check your oranges, they check your firewood. I mean, they check everything because they have a lot of rules there about that kind of thing. They're both keeping insect pests out as well as invasive species. So it really depends, right, on where you are. But yes, there are places that have some pretty solid rules about what you can bring across borders. Obviously, international borders are a bigger deal.
Yeah.
They didn't come from Nova Scotia.
Sure, I didn't hear a thing. What are you talking about?
Maine, really.
I mean, I'm definitely a seed bandit. I am notorious for it, right? Like,
Because my husband just looks at me, he's like, you're gonna go to jail.
worth it. Yeah.
Julia,
I mean,
what did you do with your lupine seeds? Did you do anything with them? Just go stay in the envelope?
they're perfectly
I mean,
preserved in the
I
fridge.
store my saved seeds in mailing envelopes on the front porch.
Sure.
But, you know,
Because I had given her some of the lupines.
yeah, they're still in that
Okay, so that's where
container,
they'll
in my
stay.
purse, probably.
I mean, during the growing season, I'm a little the same, right? Like right now, my whole seed collection is under a bench in my kitchen.
Yeah.
Because I'm just too busy. Like, I don't have time to be going in and out of the fridge and the freezer. Now, in a minute, when the growing season's over, they're all going to go back into the freezer because I don't think about them for a while, and that's where they're going to be. But, yeah, I don't have time. It's garden season. I'm fast. You know, they're kind of divided out into clumps, and then otherwise, I mean, it's not going to ruin them, right? And again, you're not trying to get your seeds to last 20,000 years. You're trying to get them to last from season to season, right? So, yeah, and most of us live in climate-controlled houses now. So a reasonably climate-controlled house that's not going from 96 degrees to 66 degrees to 94 degrees to 73 degrees, that's what's really going to make them rot over time if you have these drastic swings, because that's what fosters mold and fungal growth. And that's what's killing seeds is mold and fungal growth. Yeah.
So with that being said, if you collect seeds and you plant, it's a perennial or whatever, that next year, can you collect from the same plant that you had planted with that seed? Like how many generations can you collect
Oh, that's a really
seed
good question.
from that particular plant?
Sure. With perennials, you can kind of do it over and over because a lot of times you're not really having to worry about genetic diversity. This chart in particular from the Seed Savers Exchange, it actually, these last three columns are about how many plants you have to have if you're trying to actually maintain genetic viability. right? If you're trying to keep, because for anybody who, the phrase you hear if you take genetics classes is a genetic bottleneck, right? If you have fewer and fewer individuals and they're breeding back and forth, they start to have genetic glitches, right? And stuff stops working properly and you get these weird phenomenons and they just aren't as healthy over time. So let's see, right at the top we've got arugula. If you're doing this for genetic preservation, you have to have 80 plus plants to be back crossing to each other. But for a perennial, it's the same plant making seeds all the time, right? So you can save seeds from those year after year without worrying the same way you do an annual. Yeah.
So they'll be in the same family,
Yes.
kinda.
Yeah, I mean, like, same plant.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially if you're talking about a plant that, again, is monoecious, so it's got male and female plants, it's just pollinating itself. So
Now I'm
it's,
curious how there's 4 of us that have these seeds, what's gonna happen next.
oh, sure.
Yeah.
And some plants won't, like apples are pretty famous for this. Apples cross genetically kind of similar to humans. So it doesn't matter what you do, or if you have a red delicious and a red delicious pollinating each other, due to the way their genes work, if you save seed from those apples, every single one of those seeds is gonna come out different. Just the way every single human baby comes out different because the genes swirl around and produce different things every single time. That's why they do a lot of cuttings and grafting and stuff like that, because you get genetic identity from those kinds of fruit trees. So, I mean, I feel like it's the most annoying thing that scientists and plant people say in particular, but it kind of depends. Right? What you're saving seed from. So yeah, you can save seed from an apple, and it's never going to come true to type. You're going to get 99 crab apples and then 1 cool one. Yeah. Yeah, it's true. It's just part of it. I mean, other ones will come true to type, so it's not all fruits that are like that, but apples are notoriously like that. Yeah. Any other questions? I guess maybe as we're about to get into processing, I will go ahead and throw out that there are a few different ways you can try and get rid of all the vegetative matter, because again, that is a little bit of a goal. Some of them you can do. I personally buy lots of sieves and colanders from thrift stores. That is my favorite place to buy those kinds of things, because you never know, you get ones that are all different sizes. Sometimes you can buy the really fine ones. You also, if you want to do it, can get seed saving specific sieves, right? They have these like graduated sizes that stack together, so you put the seed in the top and you sort of swirl it down through there, and the bigger and bigger stuff gets left behind, and then the little seeds come out at the bottom. There's all sorts of actually geared to seed saving sieves you can find. I have none of them. None whatsoever, never have. I really like the little metal sieves, the kind of like old timey ones I think of my grandma having, that have the 2 little ears on the side. So they gotta rest over a bowl, and they tend to be kind of fine. The other way that I see a lot of dry processing, I mean, again, most people I know that save seeds do this, is to get some sort of fan you can put on low or have a windy day, and then it's called winnowing is the phrase for this, where you take the seed and you try and crush it as much as possible, and you've got all the vegetative matter, and then you kind of like fling it up or like sift it with your fingers like this in front of the fan, and the fan blows the vegetative matter away, and then you end up with just the seed left.
You're making that up.
No, winnowing, there's a word for it. Yeah, when they say,
I literally blow
and I just toss it up and blow.
yeah.
Oh,
That's cool.
Yeah, I'll even do it with my own breath sometimes. And it just, yeah, I mean, there's a word for it, right? Like winnowing seed, when they say that, that is what that means, is you are flinging seed in some way up in the air and allowing wind to blow away the vegetative portion of that as much as possible. Because again, vegetative matter, even when it looks dry, has moisture in it, and moisture is the enemy of seed saving, because it triggers them to germinate or rots them. And you don't want either thing when you're saving them. Yeah. So when you're processing seed, like even these little marigolds, this has to get, like all this seed stem matter has to go away, right? You can't save them like this. I mean, maybe you can if you're only saving them for a little while.
You just leave them on your porch.
Yeah, usually when I certainly have had seeds germinate in bags like this when I'm doing that, where I'm like, I don't have time, I'm gonna throw it over there. And then like half of them will have the little radical out of the seed, and it doesn't find soil and it just dries up. But in an ideal condition, you are getting rid of all of this vegetative matter before you're storing your seeds. Okay.
I got one quick question.
Yeah, right over
So
here.
typically, I would keep mine in a metal tin in my pantry.
Mm-hmm.
It's best for me to put those out on the mudroom in the winter because it doesn't get heat out there?
Yeah.
Okay.
I I would, because you're probably heating your house to what, 72 to 75, somewhere in there? And that's way hotter than they would like to be. I mean, in ideal conditions, again, it's like 30 to 40.
Yeah, I have
So-
some things that do great. My arugula has never been out in cold. It's been inside all year,
Sure.
and the arugula comes back, and the columbine always came back, but I think now I'll have more success if I put them outside.
With other ones, yeah, yeah.
That
And I mean,
might be my fail.
Don't let, if you don't have somewhere like that, if you don't have cold storage, don't let it stop you. Just give it a try. I mean, like, this is a little bit different form of plant propagation, but like, I am like this with cuttings. When I take cuttings, I will just like throw it at the wall and see what sticks. I mean, regardless of what time of year, sure, there's rules about like, oh, you should only take hardwood cuttings in late July and be sure and do the X, Y, and Z. I'm like, well, I don't know, but it's March and I want to do it right now. So, and there's a plant right here and I haven't had my pruners, so who cares, right? I mean, and when you're saving seed, no matter what you get, you've saved some money, right?
And I bet your pruners are clean and disinfected.
Perfectly clean and disinfected all the time. With a little like spray a lot of bleach on the other side. So it never infect anybody's plants. Yeah.
So one of my problems is like right now, like I've got a radish that went to seed, and some other things, and I get impatient, and I'm like, I want to use that space and start something else. And the radish seeds, I can tell they're still a little bit green, but I want, so.
Gotta wait.
Gotta leave it, okay. So
If
I
it's still
can't
green
cut
and the
it,
stem
let
is
it
still
dry.
green,
Okay.
plumbing is still flowing.
I learned something.
You can clean around it, can't you? And then store it up later.
Yeah, I mean, with a radish, I would just intercrop around it. Because they're not taking up that much space. I mean, and you could certainly, at that point,
Plus it just looks messy and I'm like, I want to clean everything up.
oh my gosh. Our garden up here, I've had a few things that I'm saving for seed, and because there's a lot of people that come in and out, I'm not always there, I'll come back certain days and they've weeded out the things that I'm saving for seed. I'm like, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine, I don't care, it's fine. Who cares, right? Amaranth, I really loved amaranth. I think they're really beautiful, like Love Lies Bleeding, or like the big green ones, and those cross-pollinate pretty readily with each other, and so I've had some weird ones, and they look like a weed. And those in particular have come back, and I've like been watching them, and they're almost to the point where they're starting to flower, and I come back and they've been ripped out. So yeah, you do have to be patient. Sorry.
Becky, is it just the radish that you were thinking about?
And the kale and some
And the
other things.
coriander, and the dill, and the arugula that's
Maybe you
draping
should just start a
over.
wholly raised bed.
There you go.
Yep.
Everything's cheap right now. Cheaper.
Also-
Yeah, I mean, seed-saving gardens look very different from edible gardens, right? Because you're letting everything go, so you are, and I mean, you almost have to keep pests off for longer too, because you gotta leave it in the garden for longer, and yeah, it's challenging.
And then, one of my problems too is once it has dried and I stick it up on the porch, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get to it, later tomorrow or something. I forget what that was. And
Oh my
so
gosh, yes.
I'm like,
Yeah,
so I've got a label
yeah,
because the leaves
Amen.
dry off. and-
yeah, amen.
Feel that,
What's that?
I know it.
Okay, okay.
I do that with seed starting trays too. I'm like, I'll remember, that's ridiculous. Of course I'll remember. Nope, no idea whatsoever's in there. Yeah, I mean, some seed, as you do it more, like Julie and I were just saying, I love the way calendula seed looks. They look like these weird little alien worms or something. They're like all curly with these knobs on them. So the more you do it, the more you're like, oh yeah, that's what that seed is, it's fine.
Yeah,
But at first, no. And the brassicas, forget about it.
yeah.
No, I mean, I don't care who you are. You can't tell the difference between a cabbage seed and a kale seed. They look
Right.
exactly the same. They're the
Right.
same plant essentially. So,
I was gonna
Right,
bring it,
yeah,
but
right,
like,
right.
I don't know if this is kale or.
I mean, I do my best to make it as fast and easy on myself. I feel like we talked about this a little when I did my seed starting talk, right? Because I stratify a lot of seed, right? Which is where you put in the fridge for like 3 months at a time. And so I have things written out for when it comes out of the fridge, and then there's a little label inside the baggie. So it can't even rub off of the plastic or anything like that, because I don't know how many times I've done that, and there's just a bag of soil in my fridge that's got something in it. I don't even know exactly. Who knows? So with seed saving, sometimes like this, I'll have it scrawled on the piece of paper, right? It's not gonna be windy, it's like bachelor buttons are right here, and I put these kale right here, or something like that. So don't feel bad about trying to make it easy for yourself.
Yeah.
I feel like I we all have a lot of things going on, especially when you're a gardener. Especially this time of year, it's a really busy cleaning up, starting, harvesting, all of that. So whatever makes it easy for you, Becky. Yeah.
There you go, remember that, Becky. Never
I
sneeze.
told myself
Whatever
next
it
year
is.
I'm gonna label, you
Yeah.
know, just put something around it so I don't have to try to guess.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but even trying to wrap something around a stem, that takes too long for me. I'm going too fast. If I have to do that, so again, I'm scrawling it on something, or I'm like putting them in some sort of category, and then I might have written it on a piece of paper in order of how they're sitting on the porch, which is actually pretty dangerous though, because then what if a cat moves them and
Or
they're
the
like,
wind.
or the wind, yeah. Dang it. So we've all been there, yeah, right, you're not alone in that.
And somebody, my husband's friend smokes cigars, and he gives us these cigar boxes, which seal them,
sure.
and they don't smell,
Yeah,
but that's what I've been saving my seeds in.
that sounds great. They hermetically seal and all that, yeah, that's awesome.
Nice.
Yeah.
Can I bring one thing up since we're talking with Becky?
Sure.
Last year, I met Becky, and she had started this group last year, correct, or 2 years ago?
Last year,
21,
last January is when I started the seed library.
So now it is how long in? The group is over 700 people?
Yeah, on Facebook it is. Yeah.
On our Facebook group that we all met. So I think you started out with how many people?
I don't even remember, to be honest with
10,
you.
12, 20?
Yeah.
And now we're up to 700. So everybody here is contributing, and since I joined the page and met Becky and Julia, I have learned so much more from all you. And I think we're learning from each other too. So I just want to say thank you, Becky. You really brought the community together. And thank you, Julia.
Oh, you're welcome.
And which Facebook page is it the Hendersonville Gardeners
Yeah.
one? So I'm on the right one?
Yeah.
Are you the gal who put the lettuce up? the other
No,
day?
I have the milkweed seeds.
Oh.
Common milkweed, anybody?
That's my favorite.
And I have dill. I didn't know what to do.
Maybe we should have another seed exchange or something.
Well, on that note, I think that's what's next. Right? We've got some seed up here that might need some processing, but it looks like people brought enough to share. And I know Julia brought some things to make little seed packs, so thank you all for coming. This is an amazing group to have in person. And we can all stand up now.